All right, Dr. Jessica Rose is our next presenter. She is a Canadian researcher with 5 post-secondary degrees in applied mathematics, immunology, computational biology, molecular biology, and biochemistry. Dr. Rose has been researching COVID-19 vaccine adverse events, and her recent research efforts are aimed at descriptive analyses of vaccine adverse event reporting system, or VAERS data, and efforts to make this information more accessible to the public, which is so important. So please, another warm welcome to Dr. Jessica Rose.
So I'm going to present some data, some old, some new, that pretty much allows us to call fraud on Pfizer in particular. I don't know why I always pick on Pfizer, but I tend to. I want to start with a quote from Byron Bridle. I don't even know if you guys know who he is, but he's very instrumental in where we are right now, because he's the guy who FOIA requested the pharmacokinetic data that basically allowed us all to know that biodistribution and accumulation of the lipid nanoparticles was very real. So, and love to his wife. His wife's been going through some problems lately, so if you could all think good thoughts for her. He wrote, "It is very disturbing to see key data redacted from the official version of the report that was released to the public, and only after a court order to do so. The redacted data contradict the conclusions that were drawn. This brings the integrity of data disclosure into question," and that kind of frames everything that I'm going to show you today. So these are boring definitions, but they're important if we want to try and prove fraud legally. So legal fraud basically involves lying to sell a product, so it involves making money, and harm has to occur or injury has to occur. Those are the central tenets of legal fraud. So somebody has to knowingly be doing this, which means that we need to not only have intention, but be able to prove it. More specifically, pharmaceutical company fraud is the intentional deception that involves misleading regulators, healthcare providers, insurers, consumers for financial gain. And this often does violate essential laws like the False Claims Act or the FDCA. So knowingly lying about drugs or biologicals like vaccines or gene therapies, their safety to make money resulting in harm. So something that I talk a lot about are the adverse events, because I'm empathetic to the people who are suffering, and these people need restitution. So this is one of the things that I'm looking for in the future, not just imposing fines, because that's not enough. They have enough money to pay fines. And restitution is problematic because, just for everybody's information, this was new to me, as it stands, according to the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, or CICP, which is established under the wonderful PrEP Act, it claims that if a death is proven to be the direct result of a covered countermeasure, like the COVID shots, the standard death benefit per person as of 2025 is about $500,000. So there are currently, right now, and this is not considering underreporting, there are 19,480 deaths in VAERS. So if even 10% of those were causally linked to the shots, it means the government payout would be close to $1 billion, and that's probably not going to be happening anytime soon. This also was new and surprising to me. This is directly from HHS's website. They had received what they actually note as a surge of 13,333 COVID claims, which is 27 times more than the previous decade. And only 3% of those claims were qualified as eligible for compensation, which doesn't speak to whether or not those people actually got compensated. They were just eligible. So very few people have actually gotten, I suppose what it would be money, for being injured, which doesn't really help you. It might help pay your medical bills, but it doesn't reverse something like neurological damage in most cases. So as everybody here probably knows, Pfizer has come under the gun many times. They have over 107 recorded violations, billions of dollars in fine payouts, including their subsidiaries that have been implicated and convicted of fraud. In purple, I write, Pfizer subsidiaries have pleaded guilty to felony charges, and the company has consistently denied wrongdoing in these resolutions while agreeing to pay the penalties. And that's just to, oh yeah, we did it. Let's make a deal. We'll pay the fine and make it go away. Shorten the litigation process. So yes, they have, and so have their subsidiaries. So, what's the likelihood that we're going to be able to accomplish this? So, according to the PrEP Act, which was amended for the 11th time, if memory serves, during the COVID pandemic, quote unquote, they get broad liability immunity, and it even covers tort claims. Any of the lawyers in here will know what that means. Basically covers negligence and product liability for losses such as death, SAEs, the serious adverse events that put you in the hospital, etc. And it shields them from most lawsuits. So what we have to do, like I was alluding to before, is we have to prove willful misconduct. Like they knew about this stuff and they went ahead and they did it anyway type thing. So if that happened, when that happens, all of these things plus more in purple will ensue. And I bring your attention to the last point, which is stock drops, which is the least relevant and the most relevant point, because if you go to any of these pharmaceuticals websites, even from the very beginning of this pandemic, you'll notice that there's way more information about stock prices than on the actual products. And as a biologist, I thought that was horrific and disgusting because, I know that this is what it's about, but it's not, especially when people are getting hurt by their products. So we have to prove willful misconduct. So did they willfully misconduct themselves, and can we prove it? Because proving intent in a court of law, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know anything about this, but it seems to me psychologically and logistically to be an almost impossible task. It's very hard, but we can try. So how do you prove fraud in court? You need 4 essential points according to my research, and this is just my preliminary research, so I might have missed some things. Basically what you need is misrepresentation of data or omission of facts. The misrepresentation has to have been perpetrated by the person knowing that it was false. So they had, it's called disinformation. This is a word that we've all come to love and know. As opposed to misinformation, which is, well, I didn't know. The plaintiff, which in this case would be Pfizer, must have relied on that misrepresentation and continued misrepresentation to sell their prodrugs. An injury. This is my kettle of fish. Must have incurred, and we know that it has, because all the pharmacovigilance databases are full, and all the medical doctors and the nurse practitioners and everyone on the ground and everyone, that we all know what's going on. So I think we can do it. We'll focus on the highlighted words, because they have thoroughly misrepresented the data. They maintain to this day safe and effective products, which is astonishing because it's been proven on both facets to be categorically wrong. They knew that they weren't safe by their own clinical trial data from going back way back when. They relied on that throughout the years with propaganda, repetition of messages like safe and effective, and injury loss have been incurred. So they knew back as early as 2020 and probably earlier about the biodistribution problem, toxicity of the LNPs. This is known. It's in the literature. I'll show you a paper from 2012. The potential for mutagenicity, I'll show you something about that too, and the durability of the mRNA, because that's by design, and the adverse events. So if you had, Kevin had 2 of these screenshots, and I love this website. Go to Pfizer's website. They have these points where they cover, and they cover everything from like, is there DNA? Is there cancer? It's really funny what they say. So they maintain, they not only maintain, but they're reaffirming recently, this is September 16th, so this is really recent, that these things are safe and effective, which is so funny. It's funny, but it's not funny. So that's a misrepresentation of both of those words, because it's been proven in the literature over and over and over again that they're not only not efficacious, but they actually demonstrate negative efficacy in a study on children, and they're not safe. This has been shown. There's thousands of papers. If you go to PubMed and you type in any adverse event like myocarditis, thousands of published studies that some of them even demonstrate causation. I want to go back in time and make a few slide point on this 95% efficacy claim. Do you guys remember that back in the beginning? This is basically what got the ball rolling. And I want to just be clear about where that came from and how stupid it was. So they based this on something called relative risk reduction, which is one of 3 things that you should calculate when you're talking about vaccine efficacy, and especially if you're writing papers about how efficient your new product is. This was when you calculate I'll just say RRR, okay? When you calculate this, you get that 95% value. So I'll lay it out here. If drug X reduces risk of disease Y from 1 to 0.05%, then the RRR is 95%. So if you go back to Pfizer's trial, the phase 3 trial, they had just about the same number of people in the, in the beginning, in the drug versus placebo groups. And those are the number of cases of COVID that they recorded, which is also speculative because it's based on PCR. And this is the calculation that you get. It's a really simple formula for the RRR. But if you calculate the absolute relative risk, which according to how you think, you might think this is a better measure. I prefer to think that you have to use both and just compare and contrast. You get 0.7%. And if you calculate the number needed to treat, which is how many, it's the clinical impact. It's probably the most important. How many people need to be treated to achieve a specific outcome, like reducing how, likely you are to get COVID. It's 139. So you need to treat 139 people to prevent 1 case type deal. So that's where that came from. And this is the chart in Pfizer's fancy paper that they used. Pfizer and Moderna were both published in the New England Journal of Medicine, as you probably all know, these seminal papers that kind of pushed all of this forward in the beginning. So this is the chart that they showed, and this is the RRR. If they had showed the one on the right, which is the ARR, how many people do you think would have been like, wow, that really works? I don't think very many. So this is the balance that I'm talking about that was lacking. It's deception. You have to show both sides or 3 sides of the 3-sided dice in order to give a informed consent, basically. Like this is what all of the risk parameters demonstrate. So I was shocked. I have to show you guys this. I don't use Grok very often, and I did not prompt it. I wasn't being Jessica when I was, talking to Grok this day. I was just literally verifying calculations. And it came back with this. It actually wrote, the ARR is hidden in big black letters from public headlines. And I was like, wow, that's pretty not woke of you. Well done. So I thought that was very interesting. It's almost like it wasn't obeying its master's rules for a moment in time. So there was intentional misrepresentation of efficacy for sure by hiding this data. And safe and effective is a marketing ploy. It's false advertising. It really is. And they knew that. And I'll keep going with this point. So I think the first one, even with this small amount of information, satisfies that first one. I'll keep going though. They knew these products weren't safe by their own clinical trial data. So there was this VerbPAC meeting way back when. I think it was December 10th. December 10th, 2020. So this was way back when they were showing the FDA, or the FDA was showing the VerbPAC people and the ACIP people, like, how's your trial going? Here, what's the data saying? So they sent this person who is a medical doctor. She, as far as I know, she's not really a data analyst, but she put together the presentation and analyzed the data. I could be wrong about that. But it's weird. I don't know. I won't say anything more about that. But this is what she showed from the data. And I draw your attention to the bottom blue box, where in the trial, at that point, they had 4 cases of Bell's palsy reported in the quote-unquote vaccine group. I'll just call it the drug group or the pro-drug group, and none in the placebo group. So I was like, that's interesting. They must write something about that or make a note of it. And they do by claiming that if you can read it, the observed frequency was consistent with background rate in the general population, which is a bizarre thing to say because the people that were pooled from both groups would have come from the same population, which means the background would be equal. So I don't know what they're talking about there. And they also say that there's no clear basis upon which to conclude a causal relationship at this time. They didn't say that in the case of lymphadenopathy, and their excuse, I guess, would be because they had more reports. But if that doesn't suggest at least a follow-up, a suggestion of causality, I'm not really sure what would. So to me, it was already a signal. That's Pfizer's data. On the right is Moderna's data. And they're the same thing. They're preliminary clinical trial data, and it shows exactly the same thing. They had 3 in the placebo group and 8 in the prodrug group. So it showed the same thing. So repetition is important. So they knew, and they had this FDA rep tell these committees on December 10th, 2020, that there was no problem. Like these aren't the droids you're looking for type thing. Now I'm going to go into the DNA. So this is an EMA document. We all love the EMA, especially Wouter. But they apprised the manufacturers that there was a problem with DNA that they've been trying to mitigate since March 2021. So in the early batches, they're supposed to be testing for superfluous or excessive levels of DNA because of the production system. And, they knew that there was DNA in there, but, I suppose they were trying to get rid of it. And they were like, yeah, it's below these so-called EMA thresholds by a certain time. So it's not a problem. But the point I'm trying to make is that they knew that this was a pending problem. And considering that we're talking about DNA in an mRNA product, which was always very much pushed as an mRNA product, that's the point I want to make. So no one can convince me that Pfizer didn't know about the EMA's concerns, first of all, or that they didn't know within their own, production teams and staffs. It's all in these original documents. I mean, the first statement here in this paragraph above some of their measurements, this residual DNA template is a process-related impurity derived from the linearized DNA template, blah, blah, blah. So that's where it came from, and I'll show you a little bit about that. But, you see the last lot on the end here, this early lot, it's 211. According to them, okay, it's still under the 330 nanogram DNA per RNA limit, so it's fine. But that's one example. Can't tell me they didn't know about Moderna's patent, because Moderna actually warned about this in one of their patents, about the dangers of introducing foreign DNA due to potential problems with integration into the chromosome and causing genomic instability. Can't tell me they didn't know about the safety signals. I mean, this is just for the US. This is VAERS data. And very briefly, this is old too, like it's been updated since then. So all of these numbers are larger and they're reported without the underreporting factor. So you can multiply this by something probably close to 30, would be my guess. On the bottom, these are the most striking figures that have come out of VAERS. You don't have to be a data analyst to do this. You just literally download the data. It's publicly available. And you just plot the data from 1990. You can go all the way back to 1990 when VAERS was incepted, and you count the number of adverse events for all vaccines combined and plot them by year on a bar graph, and that's what you get. It's about 39,000 adverse events per year since 1990 on average. And then 2021 hit, boom. You have almost 1 million reports in 2021 as compared to 39,000. I mean, in the domestic set, it was like 750,000, but that's still like, that's a safety signal, right? I think it is. When you, on the right here, I'm probably going to take up way too much time on this, but this is important. I did a time match analysis between flu vaccines and COVID products. So I took like 462-day time frame, and I counted, or I calculated how many of each product were given out in that time frame to the public. There's about 2.3 times as many COVID products put out into the public. So you'd kind of think, okay, well, if this wasn't more dangerous than the flu vaccine, then there's probably going to be a proportional increase in the number of adverse events, right? But no, it's about 118 times higher in the case of the COVID products. And what's probably more concerning is that there's 6.2 times as many types of adverse events being reported. So that reflects the systemic damage that we're seeing clinically. So, and this is what Robert was talking about. Fascinating. I love that moment. If you guys haven't watched that, you should. There was a recent meeting in ACIP, and Robert confronted this question about the cropping of these images that were in some of the preliminary data. And this is Byron Bridle again. He pointed out, not only were the images cropped to hide the kidney and adrenal gland signals, but they did something with the contrast to kind of make the signal, the luminescence, look less bright in certain areas. They were doctored. And I don't know how they're getting away with that, but that's what happened. And basically what happened was, to me, what it looked like was the Pfizer rep at that meeting passed the buck to the FDA. Like it's this like, no, they did it. No, we did it. No, I don't know. It's not the way that things should work on that level, if you ask me. More on that, they couldn't have not known about this pharmacokinetic study, so this comes directly out of that. And I plotted the accumulation of the this radio labeled lipid marker in the ovaries, and you'll notice what's most important here is this. They stopped measuring at 48. It was hours, I believe, and look at the way the trajectory is just going up. What happened after that, I wonder? So if you just assume that it's going to keep taking this track, this is hypothetical, this isn't what happened, but it's just a demonstration, like, how do we know that didn't happen after, up to 120? We don't know what happened. And it's really important to take these things into account when you're talking about putting an experimental product into billions of people. Personally, that's what I think. So this is really important, and I don't know how many people know about this. This is 2012 in the Journal of Controlled Release. This is a study that was done on the exact same animals, the Wistar rats, and pretty much the same lipid nanoparticle technology. They tried different kinds here, nanocapsules, nanoemulsions, and nanoparticles. And they found exactly that. They found accumulation in the ovaries. So, it's not like these guys didn't know. I would imagine the people in the industry are very well up to date on the literature and well versed about what happens and what can happen. So that to me is, it's clear cut. Like, you should know. If I was in the industry doing this, I would know. There's no genotoxicity or carcinogenicity studies. That's in their own document. And the reason for this, when I dug into this back in the day, was according to the WHO document in 2005. It's not going to. We don't need to do them because it's not going to matter because of the design of the product. That was basically the attitude. This is some more, I think this is Moderna data, if memory serves, from November 4th, 2021. Some of the data, if you notice on the bottom here, this was a denominator, so we couldn't do proper calculations, which was redacted up until a certain date. And then we found out what the denominator was so that we could actually get a rate in terms of what, these counts were showing on the left. So again, it was a provable lie, the safe and effective mantra, and there's no way that the Pfizer reps didn't know about these data. They relied on this misrepresentation. In other words, there was a requirement to maintain the lie of safe and effective in order to keep selling the product. So let's go back to this DNA thing. So again, back to Pfizer's amazing website. They have a series of questions that they answer for you. It's fully transparent and honest. And they ask, can you get cancer? I'll try and read this. They say, this is a quote from their website, no signs of DNA mutation or COVID-19 vaccine-induced cancer have been reported. And this is brilliant. I love this. Infectious SV40 virus is not in the... Do you see what they did there? You see what they did? That's not what we're saying. We're saying the SV40 enhancer promoter is in there. Oops. So that's intentional misrepresentation, and they know it. I think they have writers that come along and they're like, how can we write this so that people, they kind of... do you know what I'm saying? They work around the idea so that it looks like what they're saying is true, but it's actually not, and it's actually written in the words. Latest peer-reviewed study by us, Kevin talked about a week after we published it, we got this notice where they're going to put it under investigation. This is what Kevin was talking about, this quote, where this pub smear troll came along and he literally fabricated a paragraph, and that's on the left in yellow, and on the right is what's actually written in the paper that was published. So we apprised the editor of this, or I'm not sure if it's the editor of the person who's corresponding with us on this investigation, and they don't seem to care. So this is just a repetition of what Kevin said. It's really popular. And this is the latest email that we got. Following the commencement of our investigation alongside internal review, we added a temporary under investigation notification. So this reminds me of that time when they had temporarily withdrawn written beside my myocarditis paper title that one of my readers brought to my attention, and I was like, what? That's now been retracted. So this is on the train to retraction probably. So it's because of them that this investigation has been incited, and it's based on bogus claims. That's not my opinion. That's what happened. So what did the study show? Basically, there's DNA in the vials. And the reason I put it in this table here is to show you that this isn't just something we're saying. This has been studied and published repeatedly. Reproduction in science is real important. Like Kevin said, even the guys in the FDA high school were able to do this. So, yeah, can't say they don't know about that. So this is important, the bait and switch. How did it get in there? It's part of the production system that they had to bring online because they wanted to save money and time. So DNA was, PCR produced DNA was the original way to get the DNA, and that's what they used in the clinical trials. So even if you take those clinical trial data at face value, it's based on a completely different method of producing DNA using PCR, where you don't get all these methylation issues that Kevin was talking about. What they used in the commercial products, which are the ones that they put into billions of people, was this plasmid E. coli produced DNA. And what that means effectively is that you have to start worrying about the byproducts of that production process. And that includes not only parts of the plasmid, as we'll call it impurities, that's the technical term, not contamination, but you have to worry about lipopolysaccharide. And this is well known. It's well known. You have to make sure that stuff isn't in your final product. You have to make sure your end product, which is the nucleoside modified mRNA, is a clean product before you wrap it up in your little nanoparticle package. So I don't think I have this here because I don't have time, but we hypothesize that DNA RNA hybrids formed as part of the production. 5 minutes? Okay. I'm going to keep going. Very important point. They only tested this commercial product on about 200 people. What is it? Yeah, 250 participants in one lot. That's what they called a clinical trial. That's great, isn't it? Etc. Kevin already showed this. This is fraud right here. There's all sorts of junk in the vials that shouldn't be there, including DNA fragments to include the SV40 promoter enhancer, which we have absolutely no reason not to believe is fully functional. It's a nuclear localization sequence used in gene therapies, so I don't know why it wouldn't be. And we don't know why it's there. That's the most important point. So non-disclosure and intentional omission of those elements is deceitful. This is really important. I'm going to go fly through this, but you guys take this and look at it later. These regulators, Health Canada, even EMA, FDA, the TGA in Australia, persist in underplaying the real danger, which is also willful misrepresentation. So these are some articles that were written by wonderful citizen journalists that came about as citizen journalist and scientists FOIA requests, or 8 tips if you're in Canada. This is, it's old news now. It's like 2 years old, but they knew. It's all written down about what was in these vials. They checked. They blasted it. They're like, yep, they're not wrong. Did they act? So Health Canada won't say if it asked Pfizer to remove the SV40 sequence in the shots. That's what this article is about. It's by Noé Chartier for the Epoch Times. Read that. It's crazy. We don't have to tell you. Have you taken any action? This is an email from the EMA to FDA. Have you taken any action, etc.? It's not like there aren't people within the organizations who might be like trying to do some good, because they're like, what the hell is going on here in my organization? I'm not okay with this. This is just some of the emails that we got. So we know that the EMA has been trying to get answers from the FDA. This is the one that I really love. This person who works at Health Canada said explicitly that the SV40 fragment is inactive and has no functional role. That's an outright falsehood. You can't make that statement unless you can back it up with data or some kind of empirical result. You have to prove that that's not true, especially in the context of what we're talking about, because it's a nuclear localization sequence. It is functional anyway, as a promoter. There's no evidence that it's not non-functional or that it's non-functional. This is another one I love. Kevin is mentioned here. I don't know why some of this is redacted. I thought if we had time, we could play a game to guess like what words these are, but we don't have time. Should the sequence have been disclosed to us? Should our analysis have been done earlier? Maybe. I don't know. So I think we covered point 4. This is the most important part, so I'm going to go really fast. So this is VAERS data. It's, oh, okay. These are these are absolute counts. I didn't normalize this to the number of shots because it's really hard to know. But I can do that if you really want me to. If you send me an email, I'll do it. But just to show you guys, it's very important to represent this as absolute counts because each data point is a person, first of all, and it shows you that the mean, this is pre-COVID and post-COVID for 3 years. The mean prior for cancer, which is on the left, reports from VAERS, and you can see the, the query that I used here, was about 311. And then come 2021, you have this huge increase. That alone, that difference between 2020 and 2021 is worthy of investigation, if you ask me. Breast cancer, same situation. So there's an emergent signal. Like, okay, I have to make this point. VAERS is a pharmacovigilance database which is designed to detect emergent safety signals from vaccine data. That's basically what it's for. If you see a cluster of reports in a young age group, a rare cancer, something like that, something that you would think would comprise a safety signal, you have to do a follow-up analysis. You have to do a PRR calculation, proportional reporting ratio, Bayesian analysis, or Bradford Hill criteria to diagnose the likelihood of causation. You have to do this. This is what they've always done. They've done that in the past. That's what prompted the withdrawal of the rotavirus vaccine in 1999. Because of a handful of intussusception signals, that's when the bowel folds over on itself. So it works. They've done it. They've used it. How come they stopped? Colon cancer reports, same thing. It actually went higher in 2022. And by the way, the reason why the signal is decreasing, besides obvious reasons, is just because people are getting fewer, more shots, in my opinion. I did a PRR analysis on this, and if you get a value, depending on who you ask, of either 1 or 2, I like to go higher to make it harder to find a signal. That is indicative of a causal effect, or at least an association, which requires follow-up analysis. And this has one of 12, basically, when you round up. You can say 11 if you want to round down. Huge increase between 2020 and 2021, which hasn't subsided. Another thing I want to point out is we haven't gotten back down to baseline. So baseline would be like the mean for the previous 4 years, something like that. Baseline according to VAERS reports. You have to take all these into consideration. And this is funny, not funny. I just, on a whim one night, I was like, I wonder if there are any reports of weird gene mutations in VAERS, because there shouldn't be, right? It wouldn't make any sense to me. So I look back to 1990, and there's nothing until 2016 when you see a sporadic report. This is among tens of thousands, right? So it's anomalous. We don't have to worry about that. But look what happened in 2021. And so I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. So I checked out which genes we were actually looking at and talking about as being more reported. I'll just say that. And it's this list at the bottom. I don't know anything about these, so I've done a little bit of follow-up on this. You can read it on my Substack. Some of these are heritable, some of them not. Read the Substack. I don't have time to talk about it now, but there's definitely something weird going on here that requires, a look, a side eye at the very least. And Bell's palsy was always a signal. Like I pointed out before, this is the VAERS data. So those signals that they saw early in their clinical trial data, where there were 4 reports in the vaccine or the drug group and none in the placebo, look at how it's reflecting in their pharmacovigilance database a few years later. You see what I mean? It's yeah. So Yeah, lots of published studies on this. That was the point of this slide. If you go to PubMed and you type in Bell's palsy for these shots, you find a lot. You also find a lot of personal stories and accounts, like our friend on the left here. She's a Canadian. She's actually filing, her name is Carrie Sakamoto. She's filing a class action lawsuit right now, and I think she's going to do very well with that. But you can see, they call this Bell's palsy a non-serious adverse event. And if you have, she's been subjected to this for years, and this is how she is today, and she's recovered a lot. This is not non-serious. This is life-altering. Your face is your face. It's like the thing that you can't cover up unless you're a mask wearer, you know, for most of your life. This is why I'm doing this, by the way. It's for the people who don't have a voice, and their voices are being heard much more now. So I think that we can prove fraud based on, and this is, oh yeah, I love that. Let's do that again. That. I had to throw one of those in. It was inspired by a Japanese. Do you remember that, Robert, at the Japan conference? The guy had every slide. It was a bomb. I was like cracking up the whole time. Loved it. I'm sorry to be making light of this because it's not funny, but I feel like it's important to laugh at the same time because what the hell else are we going to do? Yeah, clap and laugh. One more time. I love that. Oh, shit. Sorry. I'm sorry. I have to, can I throw this in? It's really important. A new paper came out in Science like a week or two ago, and Barrick's on the paper, Ralph Barrick. If you don't know who he is, look him up. They're building a new technology right under our noses. This is in mice for now. But this isn't just this is the coating material that's going to be wrapped in a lipid nanoparticle, our favorite friend, the lipid nanoparticle, but it's not just encoding the spike protein, it's encoding a nanocage or a nanocarrier. It's this particle that's made up of 64 component parts that's got these little pores, and the little pores can be embedded with whatever protein you can think of. They're referring to this as plug and play. So for now, in the paper, they've plug and played a few different variations. They're using the RBD of the spike, but scarily enough, I don't even know if I should show you guys this because I don't know what it means yet. Well, I will. They've got an HIV protein in there, and I don't know if this is a structural component. It might be, so don't freak out. But it sounds like, and I haven't really had time to finish my deep dive into this, but it sounds like they're getting ready to try this out as a vaccine in the HIV context. And my worry is because of all the amazing transparency that we've been subjected to over the last 5 years, that they might try and pull a number on us without telling us about this. Because if it's an RBD, you know, they might call it something else, like antigenic, you know, without telling us what the antigen is. Vaccine, which is designed to, you know, give you long-lasting immunity against a broad range of pathogens, and you know, the way that they say these things. I'm concerned about this, so I needed to bring it up to you guys. Read the paper. It's not accessible. Find somebody who, you know, who has access from a university and download it and read it, and yeah, get an idea of what they might be pipelining for us. And that's it. I'm really sorry I went over.
And another standing ovation for Dr. Jessica Rose. Fantastic presentation. I know that part of your mission is to make this information accessible and easy to understand for the public. You do just that, and you also bring humor as well, much needed humor.